Welcome back to this Python tutorial series. Jumping right back into things, let's recap the task that I set at the end of the last video. So the task was to take the full name of the user and to output their name in reverse. So here's my solution to this program. Maybe yours looks similar. All I did was use 3 print commands to tell the user what they're inputting, then 3 separate variables for the different inputs. If you couldn't figure this out, don't worry. We've only used one variable before, so you might not have realized that we can use as many variables as we want. So here are 3 different variables with different names, and I just use the command print to say I prefer, just so the program makes more sense. It's just saying I prefer the name in reverse, and it just prints the reverse of the name. So let's run this to show that it works. Python version 3. Let's say that's my name. I prefer 3 version Python. So it does what it says, but it's not particularly good in the way that it does it, because it's just on separate lines, so it's not particularly clear exactly what he means. And when I say he, I mean the program. He or she, whatever you want to call it. The way we can clean this up is to encompass all of this on one print line. And like I showed you in the last video, we can attach as much as we want together onto the print command. So I prefer, and then we just use a plus, and then we can add more text or more variables. So I'll add the variable last, then the variable middle, and the variable first. You might spot a small problem with this. If you can spot it, well done. If not, you'll see it when I run the program. Look, it has reversed the name, but it's a bit of a mess. It's just all cluttered together, so remember, we'll leave a space at the end of prefer. These are variables, so we could change the variable so there's a space on the end of it, but we don't really know how to process data yet. Instead, we can just print text in between the variables, and all the text is going to be is a space. So open quotation mark, then just enter a space, and then close quotation mark, and that will just output a space in between the 2 variables. So do the same thing here, and now let's run the program. Version 3. And you can see, much better. This is exactly what the program needed to do, and it does it in a much nicer and neater way. Okay, so moving on to the focus of this video, I'll be showing you how to process data. So let's go and create a new program. Call this Lesson 3 Processing. Save. Okay, so far we've just been dealing with text, taking text input and outputting text. In programming, there's a technical term for text, and we call this strings. Okay, it might seem odd at first, but you'll get used to it eventually. Now, a string is a data type. Every variable has a data type, so that the variables we've been using so far have all been strings. But you can also have other data types, such as numbers, and if you have a variable that's a whole number, we call that an integer. And we'll be working with integers today to show you how to process numbers. So let's create a variable. I'll call it number. This can be whatever you want it to be, just like previous variables, and we'll make this equal input. And then the next line of code will just be, let's just print number for the sake of showing what number is equal to. And you might notice here, this is exactly the same as the first program that we did using inputs. We've not actually specified that it's a number data type. Calling it number is just the name of the variable. It just uses that to identify the specific variable itself. It doesn't read any of the characters to try and determine a data type. Okay, so let's take another input. We'll call this number 2 equals input. And now let's try and add number and number 2 in the print command. Try and guess what's going to happen here. If you've been paying close attention, you may realize that this is very similar to an earlier program we did. So if I do run module OK, and I enter my first number as 1 and my second number as 2, it outputs 12. Now, I'm assuming most of you here have studied at least a basic level of maths in school at some point, and yeah, that's not how maths works. So let's look at this. 1 plus 2 equals 12. Well, actually, we're thinking about it in completely the wrong way. These aren't numbers, these are just text characters. So all it's doing is getting the text character 1, the text character 2, and then just adding the two strings together to make 12. Like in the earlier programs, we added strings together when we were adding different parts of the names. This program is doing exactly the same thing. It doesn't actually know that we're working with integers. And so, in Python, to declare a variable as an integer, what we need to do is type int for int and use this around the input, and that converts the input to an integer, so Python will know that number is an integer, and we'll do the same thing for number 2. If you just do it for one of them, then one of them will be a string, one of them will be an integer, and you'll get an error because Python won't be able to add it. You can try this for yourself, see what happens. But let's just run this now. And 1 and 2, oh, 3. There we go, it's worked because Python knows these two are integers because we've set them to take the integer values rather than using the input as just a string, and it has done some processing here by adding them together. Typically in programs, we don't want to do all of the processing within a print command, because when you've got a lot of processing going on, you just have a massive line and you probably won't be able to fit everything into that print line. So sometimes it's best just to introduce a new variable that will be the result of the processing. So if we say number 3 and we set this equal to number plus number 2, just like we were printing, and instead of printing number plus number 2, we just print number 3. Now again, this equal sign, all it means is whatever's on the left, we're going to give it the value of what's on the right. So we're defining this new variable called number 3, and we're giving it the value of number plus number 2, and then we're outputting number 3. And if you run this, you'll see it does exactly the same thing. Okay, so this is just a very basic look at how to process data in programming languages, and specifically Python. I'm going to set you the task of trying to take two inputs from the user and to subtract them and then output the result and the original two numbers. So remember, you're going to want to make sure that the inputs are converted to integers when you're subtracting them. Make sure to subscribe if you want to catch the future episodes. That concludes this video. This episode's throwback segment is to a video called Uvote. Technically it's called An Introduction to Uvote. This was a short-lived series that I came up with where I would pick two or several items where the idea is the viewers would vote for one and I would eventually announce the results. It might seem slightly out of place on this channel of programming videos and animations, but I felt slightly adventurous, and I was mainly inspired by the annotations feature, knowing that I could have two links to different videos and use the views on the videos as a measure of how many votes various things have gotten. And since I did these, I have seen several other channels actually using the same technique. Now, I'm not claiming to be the first one to do it, but at least I know I'm not the only one. So this introduction video is me just explaining how this worked. It didn't do particularly great, this introduction video, but I did get a few views on the actual voting ones. I only ever did 2 votes, one about whether you enjoyed the movie Avatar and one about the big gaming consoles of 2010 when they announced the 3DS, Kinect and PlayStation Move, which in hindsight most of them were slightly short-lived, I guess. Kinect definitely had a bit of a buzz around the launch and it didn't sell too badly, but nowadays I think the main focus is on Xbox One. PlayStation Move, I never really hear about that anymore. It's slightly unfair because 3DS is its own handheld console which is doing considerably well, even though Nintendo isn't doing too great at the moment. Looking back on that, I actually can see that the PlayStation Move got 4 votes, Kinect got 14 votes, and the 3DS got 5 votes, so the few viewers that I had thought that Kinect was the way forward, and I guess, to me at least, it was the most interesting of the 3 technologies, and it was pretty amazing what it did, to be honest, being able to single out you from your background using infrared and sensing your depth. So maybe you want to go check that out for yourself. Or the other one was the avatar one. I hope these insights into old videos are slightly interesting, or just give you something interesting to watch if you're bored checking out amateur YouTube videos from back in the day. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.